Update. Am I the a-hole for bringing up just how much I actually do for our household to my wife? Original post. Can't believe I actually have a reason to post something on Reddit, but here I am. My wife, 41 female, and I, 42 male, have been married for 15 years. I apparently surprised her by being capable of doing household chores and tasks, which I didn't think much of. My mom always asked me to help out with chores when I was a kid, so I didn't think it was beneath me or anything. I do think I inherited her need to clean excessively, like it's so bad that I can't eat until a mess is dealt with. My mom is an amazing cook. My aunt was a literal chef at a fancy hotel, and my dad loved having barbecues. It was pretty natural to learn from them and pick up a thing or two. The only thing I didn't pick up was how to make a decent cup of tea or coffee. I'm genuinely awful at it. It got to a point where I was handling most of the household chores and taking care of cooking, which I prefer anyway since she comes home exhausted. I've been asking our children, 11 female and 9 male, to do some minor tasks around the house and hopefully teach them this sort of thing too. She has a group of friends who hang out regularly. This time, it was her turn to host the group at her home. I offered to take our children out for the day and it was all set. Before we left, I had to finish up some things for work. The office space is practically on top of our living room, so I could hear what they were talking about the entire time. One of the friends asked how she always kept our house so spotless, and my wife just bragged about how she was responsible for it all. Then they all started talking about their gripes with their marriages. A common theme was how unhelpful their spouses were. I felt pretty uncomfortable, so I just left the office and went out with the kids. I came back after they had left for the night and acted as normal until we got to our bedroom. I asked her what was up with that conversation they had and pointed out that I did the cooking and cleaning in our marriage. She told me not to take it personally and that she just wanted to fit in with the struggles of her friends. Now I just feel unappreciated, especially since I don't clearly remember any genuine gratitude for what I do from her. Since then, she's been pretty short with me. She says I'm weaponizing what I'm doing against her and holding it over her head. I don't expect her to compliment me each time I clean or defend me religiously. Just a little, "My husband is pretty helpful actually, he does his share," would be nice. I can't help but feel like her friends think I'm some sort of deadbeat who comes home to relax and neglect her. Now for the top comments before reading the updates. Not the a-hole. You're not weaponizing what you're doing against her. You're just insisting that she doesn't lie about you and badmouth you to her friends, which is exactly what she is doing. She knows that she is in the wrong here, hence her hostile response. She doesn't have a reasonable defense for her behavior. Personally, I wouldn't let this go. Her friends are people you will have to socialize with from time to time, and therefore what they think about you does matter. Love it. His wife is accusing him of weaponizing his competence. That's a fresh take on here. It is even more messed up that she is bad-mouthing her own husband to fit in with her friends, when in truth, she knows her husband goes above and beyond for her and her family. I would not have reacted as well as you. You're a better man than me, not the a-hole. I didn't want to ruin her day or make things awkward with her friends, so I only asked her about what happened the night in our bedroom. Like I said, you're a better man than me. I'd have dropped the bomb and bounced. You did the right thing, I think. Are you a stay-at-home father? We both work. She makes about $100K a year while I make around $70K. She earns more, but she's definitely not the only income in our household. What makes my job great is that my boss lets me have a lot of flexibility, so I can work from home and take care of the house and kids as long as I give him a heads up. Sounds like she needs a sample of being in charge of everything for a few weeks. I don't think she could do it, purely because of her job. I've got a lot of flexibility and leeway with my boss that allows me to do whatever I need to do at home or handle our children. She doesn't have that benefit and genuinely comes home about 6 to 7 p.m. exhausted. Now for the first update. I'm pretty shocked this post went as viral as it did, and I tried my best to talk to my wife yesterday. I just can't believe this is the woman I married. I tried speaking with her, explaining that while what she did wasn't the worst thing, it still wasn't a nice thing to do. She didn't appreciate me bringing it up again and told me to suck it up and stop complaining about one mistake. She apologized, but it sounded like she just was tired of dealing with the issue. I could see her getting heated and on the verge of starting an argument, so I backed off and changed the subject. I asked if we could adjust our responsibilities at home to be more balanced since most of the household management falls to me. Almost everything, about 90%, like cooking, cleaning, and even planning our date nights and family vacations, relies on me. I do think it's an issue she gets to come home and simply say she's tired. She then got in my face, saying I had no right to lecture her about chores since I'm home most of the time. She refused to listen and insisted that our current arrangement works best for our situation. She threw it in my face that she's the primary earner and said that balances everything out. Even this morning, she was visibly annoyed, coming downstairs in a bad mood. I'm pretty sure our kids noticed it too, but I drove them to school after they got ready. When I got back, I saw that my wife had left her packed lunch on the kitchen counter. So now I'm sitting here feeling like the woman I've known for 15 years hates me. She's been ignoring my texts and attempts to call her. I guess I'll have to address this issue properly even if it makes her angry. I can't just let her act like this, especially in front of our children. She's not entitled to be acting the way she's acting, given how you realistically do all the housework. She's an adult woman throwing a fit like a child because she was called out and lying to her friends about the amount of effort she puts in around the house. Maybe if she's offended by you calling her out, she should step up and help out more instead of whining at you for being right. I read this with a gender switched and yikes. It kind of does sound worse. Wife is a major a-hole. Any disrespectful one to speak that way about her husband like that and continue to double down. My mother-in-law did this, and when called out more, she doubled down then cried that she doesn't have a family because no one backed her up. Some people are too far up their own behind to smell anything but crap. Is she cheating? We haven't had any reason to doubt each other in our relationship, so no. I don't think she even has the energy to bother trying. Second update. I think I'm just done at this point. For the first time, I did something I've never done before. I went through her phone while she was sleeping. We both know each other's passwords, so it wasn't difficult. Some of the comments about possible cheating got to me and I felt paranoid about the situation. Instead, I found a group chat with some of her work friends, different from the friends she had over recently. It was filled with non-stop mockery of me and the things I do for her. She told them how embarrassed she feels to be with me, saying I dote on her like a parent and don't feel like her husband. The lunches I pack for her are humiliating because I add sweets and treats I know she likes. Some of her coworkers teased her about the snacks I pack, and she admitted to just throwing them out at work. She has no issue eating them at home, but at work, she throws out my baking. She also had some pretty hurtful things to say about me in the chat, things I don't even have the courage to type out here. One of the pictures she shared was edited to make it look like I was scrubbing a bathroom towel in a 1960s housewife dress, as if to mock me for doing chores. I just closed her phone and left the bedroom. In the morning, I confronted her about the chat and its contents, which made her panic. I focused on our kids, taking care of their needs, and left her to herself. It's not like she'd have appreciated a kid's lunch anyway. Now she's been texting me nonstop at the office, but I think I've lost all respect for her and what she's become. Not only does she find me overbearing and embarrassing as a husband, but she mocks me to her friends and shares sensitive details about our relationship with them. This will probably be the last update, as I don't think she can come back from this. We just celebrated our 15th anniversary last month, and now after seeing what my wife truly thinks of me, I feel like a fool. I hope she ends up with some slob who sits on his butt drinking beer while she does all the cooking and cleaning, since that's apparently her idea of what a husband should be like. Divorce her and push for full custody of your children for their sake. She neither wants to do chores or have a partner who does chores for her. There's no way she can keep a household fit for kids like that. Preach. She needs to spend a few days on Reddit reading every story about every deadbeat husband. She had no idea what she had. I bet she LARPs as the wife of a deadbeat online since she claimed to do all the housework to her coworkers. She just wants to be told that she's an incredible wife to an undeserving husband. Sorry it came to this. Good luck moving forward, OP. Next story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to include my grandparents in my life after years of them treating me and my siblings like we were bastards? So I'm a 16-year-old girl and my parents, 48 male and 50 female, had an affair that resulted in my birth. My dad's family was outraged and cut him off after he divorced his first wife. They never acknowledged me or my siblings, 14 female, 11 female twins, and 9 female, as their grandkids. When I was younger, it hurt seeing my dad's other kids getting outings and a lot of presents at Christmas. But once I hit my early teens, I just kind of stopped caring. Adding to that, I hated how they treated my mom, so I really didn't want much to do with them. My dad has never forced us to spend time with them, thankfully. It's not like they cared much about us anyway. Once my dad's other kids were old enough, they left to live with their mom and stopped visiting much. I was actually glad to have all that negativity gone, honestly. Around the time I turned 12, it seemed like they had a change of heart and started trying to get close to us. But it didn't work, not even with my sister Anna, who is the sweetest girl ever. I guess calling kids bastards and treating them like unwanted things kind of makes them not want you around. Crazy, right? Anyway, I'm in my school's science club, and we recently had a big event. My club and I got a table and did a presentation of all the things we made. I was super excited. About a week after the event, I was talking about it while my dad's dad was there. He turned to me and asked why I didn't invite him. I told him I only wanted my family there. He said he is family, and I replied, "Are you though?" Because I thought I was just some bastard kid you didn't claim until only 4 years ago. He got mad, but my dad stepped in. Now I'm getting messages from his other grandkids calling me an a-hole, but I don't think I am. Am I? The saying you reap what you sow seems to fit here. Grandparents didn't care about you until the older ones don't have time for them. You don't owe them a relationship now that they're lonely. I often tell people who do something really crappy to others that there will be a price to pay. Your situation with your grandparents is just such a situation. Treating kids like that, blaming them for something the adults did, is unforgivable in my opinion. I agree with your decision to not include your grandparents in your life and would do the same thing. Sometimes people need to learn that just because you've had a change of heart doesn't mean the people you've hurt had one too. And learn they can't just skate back into someone's life after years of treating them like dog excrement. I'm not gonna tell you this should be your stance forever. It's up to you, of course. But if this were me, I would require a lot more effort on their part than just suddenly acting like you've always been family. Good luck whatever you decide. The real a-holes here are the parents. They are twice the a-holes, one for the affair and twice for allowing grandparents to have access to the children. Last story. Am I the a-hole for laughing at my ex's mother and telling her how much child support I've been receiving? My ex and I parted ways back in 2023, and ever since, communication with him and his family has been rocky. He wasn't interested in providing for our child, 6, so I had to apply for child maintenance. He currently owes around £1,300 in child support, but has only paid about £120 in total. I've never been on good terms with his parents. Among other things, they asked me not to apply for child maintenance, saying their son couldn't afford it. So you could say we're not exactly friends. Here's where the problem started. They recently found out about several concerts I'm planning to attend. While I did post about it on social media, they don't have access to my accounts, so I'm not sure how they found out. During a recent child drop-off, my ex's mother got very upset over my concert plans and started lecturing me about wasting the child support on myself, and so on. I couldn't hold it in and started laughing, which only made her angrier. Once she finished ranting and I stopped giggling, I told her that her son's child support wouldn't even cover the travel cost of my trip, and that she could rest assured I don't live off of it. I explained that it wouldn't even be enough to raise my child, let alone support us both. I probably should have left it at that, but I added that so far, we've received about £10 a month. I said that without doing the exact math. Truthfully, it's about £11. I added that it doesn't even cover the cost of the fruit my child eats, so neither of them has any say in how I spend my own money. For context, I work full-time and support my child and myself with my own earnings. She called me a liar and stormed off. Now their whole family is upset with me, saying I was rude and demanding I apologize. They also said I was an a-hole for mentioning the exact amount of child support, since it puts my ex in a bad light. My friends are divided. Some found the situation hilarious, while others think it was fair to stand up for myself, but say I shouldn't have told the exact amount. In my defense, I had no idea it was such a sensitive topic. I genuinely thought she didn't care about the amount and was just upset that I was getting any money at all. Also, for what it's worth, my child didn't witness this interaction. She was already inside, and I'm sure it would have gone differently if she had been present. So, am I the a-hole for laughing and telling her how much child support I've been receiving? Nope. I told everyone about the £10 per month my kids were expected to live off of to anyone who told me I was living off of my ex's hard-earned dosh. If he's a deadbeat, make sure everyone knows about it, because I'm not going to work my butt off to maintain my children in a good lifestyle whilst he takes the credit. My ex was similarly upset because I set the record straight. Apparently, I caused his manliness hurt he feels, or something I couldn't give a crap about. OP not the a-hole. Yes, when I was attacked for stealing his tax return, I pointed out that that only happens when there are arrears. Oh, so he's paid up now? Yes, for 2018. I've already paid for what the kids need. When his tax return comes, I buy some extras. I was accused of stealing our tax refund. Ex thought he was being smart, changing his address to his mother's. About a week after he did that, I got the refund at our house because it was addressed to both of us. He also thought he was being so smart when he closed the checking account. He forgot about the joint savings account. I deposited a check in there and gave him a check for half. He blew up because he thought he deserved 60% since he made more money, but we both signed the form and were both liable for any taxes due. Fair is fair. He told his family I went to his mother's house and took the check from the counter, saying I left my red hot lipstick on a glass. When I heard that, I laughed so hard I about peed myself. If he had gotten that check, I would never have seen any of it. Update. Am I the a-hole for snapping at my wife and calling her crazy because she wants me to take a paternity test for my nephew? Original post. My wife and I have been married for 10 years and have been together for 14. We don't have kids. I have a 13-year-old nephew who looks a lot like me. We share some similar facial features. I'm really proud of him, and we've always had a close bond. I've played a father-like role in his life since he was young, especially since his own father is absent, and my sister divorced him a long time ago. Some family members have commented on how much my nephew resembles me, and at first, I thought it was just a nice observation. But for some reason, these comments started making my wife insecure and doubtful. She was questioning why I needed to play such a prominent role in my nephew's life, why my nephew had autism, etc. Her insinuations became uncomfortable and strange. I admit that my sister's dry humor might have contributed to my wife's insecurities. During family gatherings, my sister would joke about how nice it is that her son looks like me, saying she couldn't be happier. It was clearly meant as a joke, but I asked my sister to tone it down because it's affecting my wife. Last night, things escalated when my wife asked if I would take a paternity test to put her mind at ease. That's when I snapped and called her crazy, saying that marrying her was the biggest mistake of my life. I regretted saying it immediately because it wasn't true. My wife is the love of my life. She went quiet and started crying, and I had to console her afterward. Was I the a-hole? Now for the top comments before reading the update. She thinks you had a baby with your own sister? Not your brother's wife or anything, but your own sister. No, that is crazy. My oldest niece is a miniature version of me. Looks and attitude, lol. I have never once been accused of incest with my brother. OP, your wife is on some other level of insecure. You are not the a-hole at all. She needs therapy. It's genetics, and sometimes a niece or nephew can look just like that aunt or uncle. Like it's crazy to insinuate incest because he looks like his uncle. Does she not understand they are siblings and have similar genetics? Two full-blood siblings share about 50% of their DNA. That means the odds of OP sharing significant features with his nephew are 1 in 4, which not rare. Sorry, but someone accuses me of sleeping with my sibling, I'm gonna say some kind of something to them. It won't be pretty. She doesn't get to cry and acts like she did nothing wrong. Not the a-hole. And love of your life or not, your wife thinks you slept with your sister. How do you come back from that? An accusation of ordinary cheating is bad enough for a marriage and can definitely justify some not-so-nice words. Throw incest into the mix and yeah, OP's wife is definitely in the wrong here. She needs to pull her head out of her behind and apologize, then probably seek therapy. Now for the update. Hey everyone, just a quick update. I've agreed to take the paternity test, but there are some conditions attached. I realize my wife is being paranoid and irrational, but I'm willing to take the test to help ease her fears. Sometimes, fears don't follow any logic. I've had my own irrational worries before. I talked to my sister today, and she was understandably upset with my wife. But after discussing it at length, my sister agreed to the test, provided we set some conditions. Later, I spoke to my wife and told her I was willing to take the test, but there were a few terms. My wife was relieved that I agreed and explained the conditions to her. The first was that she needed to stop making any insinuations or accusations immediately. She agreed right away. The second condition was that there would be no more arguments about me spending time with my sister and nephew. Over the years, we've had disagreements about why I spent so much time at their house. My wife agreed to this condition, though she took a little time to consider it. The third and final condition was that I would be free to go on vacations with my sister and nephew without my wife coming along. I told her up front that my sister doesn't want her to join us on these trips anymore. My wife hesitated a bit on this one, but she eventually agreed. That's probably my final update. Thanks everyone for the advice. This will clearly resolve everything. I give her 1 month before she claims you lied about the results or it's a false negative. The thing is, the test is going to show they're genetically linked because he is the kid's uncle, and that alone might be enough for her to be convinced he is the father, even when the percentages don't line up. This isn't a mentally stable person he's dealing with. Therapy should have been one of his conditions. I had the same thought. They're biological siblings. The test will come back that he and his nephew are related, and I can imagine OP's wife twisting it to say she was right. Lol, dude, it's not gonna matter what the test says. Your wife has an irrational delusion in her head and will go through whatever mental gymnastics she needs to justify it. The test is not going to help. If anything, it's going to get worse, especially based on the conditions you set. I told my sister this, but if this doesn't work, I'm going to look into divorce. Next story. Am I the a-hole for taking my kids back home with me from my parents' house after they violated the one simple rule I gave them? In March 2022, my parents reached out to me because they wanted to meet my daughters, Angela and Julianne, both 9, IVF twins. I agreed on the condition that they would not introduce my kids to my aunt's family. Growing up with my aunt's family was a nightmare. They were incredibly abusive and neglectful when I lived with them. To give you an idea, back in 1997, my aunt took my brother's asthma inhaler and refused to give it back because he wouldn't share his cookies with her daughter. This was a woman in her mid to late 20s doing this to a 7-year-old. I had my lawyer draft a contract outlining my terms. It wasn't legally binding, just symbolic, but it clearly stated that I would fly with my daughters from Seattle to Albuquerque for spring and summer breaks, provided that my aunt's family wouldn't be introduced to them or come near the property under any circumstances. I reserved the right to never bring my kids back if the rule was violated. My mom signed it and I planned a trip. Before leaving, I explained to my daughters who these people were and why I didn't like them. I told them to let me know if they met them. I treat my kids like they can understand things, and I always try to explain situations to them honestly. We made a flight down and arrived at my parents' home. But 2 hours later, the doorbell rang. Guess who it was? My aunt's family, standing around and laughing as if we've always gotten along. I turned to my mom and asked, "Why did you invite them?" Mom, well, they're family. Me, they're your family. Angela and Julianne were going home. Since the girls hadn't unpacked yet, they grabbed their things and I collected my belongings to leave. My mom broke down, begging me not to go, saying things like, "Really? You actually meant it?" And "I can't believe you." Meanwhile, my aunt's family started making judgmental comments, calling me ungrateful and trying to guilt-trip me. If you've ever dealt with abusive people, you know they always resort to the same victim-blaming tactics. After that, I blocked my parents and aunt's family on all platforms and instructed my kids to do the same. They've complied, but not before asking me for the latest new jeans merch, of course. 2 weeks ago, my brother came over and tried to reason with me. He spoke calmly, asking me to reconsider. I told him I gave them one rule, and they violated it within 2 hours of us being there. It's not just about the rule. It shows they don't respect me. They cared more about my aunt's family than they did about respecting my boundaries, which makes me question how much they really care about my kids if they were willing to break the agreement so quickly. It seems my mom has either forgiven or doesn't care enough about what we endured with those people to respect my boundaries. She seems to think I was bluffing, even though I made my rules clear. Your brother was the one she took the inhaler from, and he's going to bat for them? Jesus, he's in it deep too, huh? Not the a-hole. My brother is actually a very forgiving and loving person. He likes to see the good people and believes that people can change. I agree with him to an extent. Really, the only reason those people aren't messing with him is because he is older and has been overseas with the US military. Your brother is trauma bonded with your family. He is allowing himself to be used to manipulate you, and he refuses to see it. He is not forgiving and loving. He is a doormat. I really hate to consider that possibility. I reserve the right to never bring kids back here if you violate this one rule. She signed it and I planned a trip. Really? You actually meant it? That is the weakest reaction ever. Who goes through the trouble of having someone sign an agreement just for the fun of it? Why did she think you went to all that effort? At least she showed her true colors so early in the visit. If she had waited until the end, it could have caused real confusion for your children. They would have had, hopefully, good memories with Grandma, and then struggled to understand why Grandma did something wrong at the end. Instead, she broke the rule almost as soon as you arrived. And your kids could see that you take rule-breaking seriously. It's also a good thing that your aunt stayed true to her usual self, showing that she hasn't really changed, despite what your brother hoped. True change would have started with a sincere apology and a willingness to accept any terms given by the offended party. They just don't take me seriously. They think I'm still a kid in middle school who has childish complaints or something. Next story. Am I the a-hole for cutting off my parents after they pressured me to give up my autistic son for adoption? I, 32 female, am a single mom to my 7-year-old son who is on the autism spectrum. He is everything to me. I've been raising him mostly on my own since my divorce 3 years ago. My ex and I tried to make it work, but the stress of raising a special needs child took a toll, and he walked away. Now it's just me and my son. While it's not always easy, I wouldn't trade him for anything. But my parents don't see it the same way. Ever since my son's diagnosis, they've made comments implying that he is too much for me to handle. At first, it was more subtle, like you need a break or he must be exhausting. But recently, it's gotten worse. They've even suggested I should consider putting him up for adoption because they believe he is too much of a burden. The first time they said that, I was in shock and didn't know how to respond. I love my son with all my heart, and the idea that they see him as a problem that could be fixed through adoption made me sick. I tried to explain how hurtful their words were, but they wouldn't stop bringing it up. Every time we talked, they hinted that I was making things harder for myself by keeping him. They've said things like, "You're still young, you could have another chance at a normal life," as if my son isn't already my entire world. Things came to a head a couple of weeks ago when they actually sat me down and said they'd done research on homes for special needs kids, suggesting he could get better somewhere else. They've even said it would be better for everyone if I gave him up. I was absolutely furious. I told them they were cruel and heartless, and if they couldn't accept my son as part of our family, then they weren't part of our lives anymore. Since then, I've cut off all contact. My phone's been blowing up with messages from my parents and even other family members telling me I'm overreacting and that they were just trying to help. They're saying I'm being ungrateful and that I should think about how hard it is for them to see me struggling. Some relatives are even suggesting I should forgive them because they're my parents and only want what's best for me. But I can't get past what they said. My son isn't a burden, and he certainly isn't someone to give up just because life with him is more challenging. He's my child, my entire world. Now I'm questioning myself. Am I being too harsh? Should I give them another chance because they're family? Or am I justified in cutting them off after what they said? Am I the a-hole? You are not the a-hole. Your parents' suggestion to give up your son is unacceptable. Your child's well-being is your priority and your right to defend him. Appreciate your support. I will always stand behind him. Always. As I stated in my first reply, I raised an ASD son and my daughter has 3 sons who are on various levels of the spectrum. I wouldn't trade any one of them for so-called normal boys. If your parents will not accept and love your son, you have no choice but to go no contact. Another Reddit case of time to cut off all these people and move somewhere else. Last story. Am I the a-hole for telling my brother's fiancé to grow up and stop trying to put her anger and trauma on me? My brother Matt, 30 male, is engaged to Evelyn, 32 female. Matt is our parents' biological son, and I'm 25 female, their adopted daughter. We also have another biological sister and 2 more adopted brothers. Our parents fostered many kids and adopted some of us. I've always known I was adopted, as I was removed from an unsafe environment and didn't have any safe biological relatives. My biological family is small in terms of known members, and none of them are good people. I'm very grateful to have been adopted. I feel lucky to have found a family that embraced the fact that we weren't biologically connected but loved us just the same, without any shame. Each of us who were adopted has our own story. One of my brothers, for example, was orphaned, and his birth parents wanted him to find a family who would love and care for him, which he found with us. Matt's fiancée, Evelyn, was adopted as an infant and has a lot of complicated feelings about it. I understand why she feels this way, especially since her adoptive parents tried to erase her biological background, shamed her for being curious about it, and spoke negatively about her birth family. I don't think that was fair or right. However, Evelyn tends to push her feelings onto other adoptees, assuming we all feel the same as she does. She has made negative comments about my parents, accusing them of robbing 3 children of their rights to their biological family history and identity. She even suggested that I was brainwashed by CPS into believing that I was removed for safety reasons and had no safe biological relatives. For the record, all my known birth relatives have been in and out of prison, and I have verified this. She told me that I'm just traumatized and too afraid to admit that I was denied my real family. I explained to her that I don't feel that way, but she insisted that all adopted kids feel the same, claiming that adoptees are treated as products in the US. I told Matt that I couldn't handle this anymore, and that I would need to see him and Evelyn less if they didn't stop. Despite this, she keeps seeking me out. On Saturday, while she was at my parents' home, she tried to bring it up again. I couldn't stand her talking about my parents that way in their own home, so I snapped. I told her to grow up and accept that people can have different experiences and perspectives, and that only children think everyone should feel the same. I also said that she needed to stop projecting her anger and trauma onto me, just because our experiences are different. Evelyn said I was being spiteful and throwing it in her face. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. What does your brother do while she sits in your parents' home and talks smack about them? Do your parents know? He doesn't say anything in front of us. Our parents know. I didn't know it, but they were aware before too. They feel bad that her experience left her feeling as she does. Your parents are so good. You are not the a-hole. She should really seek therapy. I agree. I think that's why she's so explosive about the topic. She needs to talk about it because her feelings are so complicated and make her miserable with her anger and grief. Not a-hole. In advocacy spaces, there's a few golden rules. Things like, don't talk about us without us, as in don't represent us without letting us talk too. And a big one is, experiences may vary and I cannot talk for you because I haven't walked in your shoes, as in what you've experienced I cannot imagine, because I haven't lived your life. Evelyn is failing on both of those. Probably more. Has she got an adoption fetish? Is that why she's with your brother? How does he feel about all this nonsense? Not her, but the crap she's talking. And how will he reconcile this with having children with her? I think she has become so bitter about the flaws in the adoption system and the bad outcome she got that she can't accept there are people who have benefited from it too. I don't believe adoption is part of the reason she's with him because she found out about some of us being adopted months into their relationship.
Update. Cousin, 20 female, who lives with my wife, 34 female, and I, 34 male, disappeared and told her sister, 33 female, that I tried to shoot my shot with her. I didn't. We are confused and worried about her. Original post. This is slightly long, but I think it's helpful to give the background to understand the current situation. 2 years ago, my cousin Bex got into a college that is close to where my wife and I live. Due to COVID, she had the option to be virtual, which she chose during her freshman year, but last year she was in person. After doing virtual her first year, Bex felt anxiety about finding a roommate and living in the dorms. My wife and I told her that we would be happy to have her live with us. The arrangement worked out really well for all parties. Due to the age difference, I was always closer to Bex's older brother and sisters, one of them being Tori, who comes up later. It was nice to get to know Bex better. She's smart, with a sharp wit and great with our kids, 5 male and 3 female, who have loved having Aunt Bex around. She became part of our family, joining us for meals, family time, trips, errands, and so on. We let her know early on that she could either do family stuff with us or not. If she just wants to use our house as a place to sleep, that's fine. She has chosen to be active with us. Having Bex with us has been good for Rach and I as well. Bex has always been willing to babysit the kids, letting us get out for date nights and such. The arrangement from the beginning is that Bex doesn't pay an official rent. Instead, her parents give Rach and I $400 a month to help cover stuff like food and utilities. When Bex watches the kids, we always pay her well, and this is important later. The living situation was going well enough that Bex asked if she could live here over the summer while she continued her job, which we all agreed to. Last winter, Bex started bringing Will around. They met through some mutual friends and eventually started dating. He was a bit standoffish at first when we interacted, but he eventually learned that I had been roped into a March Madness bracket pool where I was in over my head, and Bex had asked Will to help me a bit. He is really into stuff like sports betting and daily fantasy, and helped me a lot. We definitely weren't friends, but I tried to be nice and welcoming to him. At the same time, I wasn't always crazy with how he treated Bex. He would nag her a lot about her body and her intelligence, which is crazy because she's a decent-looking and smart girl. This happened enough and got under Rach and my skin enough that Rach eventually called him out on it one time when he made a comment at a family gathering. Additionally, Bex would often make comments about how if she went out with friends, he would constantly be texting her and trying to get her to leave her friends and hang out with him. I also didn't like that he seemed to not really have any ambition in life. He didn't work, lived in an apartment paid for by his parents, and spent all of his time betting on sports and gaming. Now don't get me wrong, I love video games, but he would always tell people that he's making it as a professional gamer when his Twitch stream had maybe 15 people on it max. A little under a week ago, I was away for business for a night, but Rach texted me that Bex came home upset, saying that Will broke up with her. After the kids went down, Rach says she stayed up with Bex caring for her, watching old TV shows and drinking wine. I get home the next day, and that night after dinner, Bex starts telling us what happened, how Will broke up with her out of nowhere. Both Rach and I say the same things to Bex, that he's stupid, he isn't going anywhere in life, we don't really like him, and he didn't treat her well. All the stuff that you say when someone you care about gets broken up with and you didn't really like the ex. I thought that the conclusion at the end of the night, that while the situation was hard, the timing allowed for a fresh start with the fall and new classes starting. The next day, when Rach and I get home from work, Bex isn't home. She often goes out with friends or does her own thing, so we didn't really think too much about it. It was weird when she didn't come home overnight though. The next morning, Rach texts her, "Didn't see you come home last night. Just wanted to make sure you're okay." By that night, Bex still hadn't responded and didn't come home. We started to get worried. We called straight to voicemail. She didn't come home the next night and we started to really worry. We called and texted a few more times. The third night of Bex being gone, Tori, Bex's sister who I've always been close to, FaceTimes me. Without any greeting, she tells me she wants my side of the story. Confused, I asked her what she was talking about. She tells me that she had been texting Bex earlier in the day, and Bex told Tori about how I had tried to shoot my shot with her. After being really confused, Tori came out with Bex's story of what happened. Will had broken up with Bex over a misunderstanding. Instead of being there for her, I had lectured Bex about how terrible of a person Will is. Bex goes and talks to Will the next day. Will tells Bex that we only asked Bex to live with us so that we would have a live-in nanny who we could stick our kids with. Will tells Bex that I was probably shooting my shot with her, and that she shouldn't come back to our house, or else I will try to manipulate her into never seeing him or any of her friends again. Now let me be clear. I did not, nor would I ever, shoot my shot with Bex. My wife Rach was present for the entire conversation with Bex about Will. Rach and I have a strong marriage and partnership. This isn't just a we have a great intimate life kind of thing. We are strongly connected by shared life and goals, strong trust and communication, healthy intimate life, committed to each other and our family. Sure, we have our issues, but we have a strong marriage, and I have no desire to blow up my family or my life by shooting my shot with anyone, much less my cousin. Additionally, when we asked Bex to live with us, her babysitting was not part of the arrangement. We paid her well and always asked her, never assuming she would babysit. We hired other babysitters a number of times when Bex wasn't able or interested in caring for the kids. To illustrate, we hired a sitter once when Bex was working on a major project. She was in the house working in her room, but we hired a sitter so she knew that she could just focus on schoolwork in her room, instead of trying to do that and watch the kids for a few hours. Today is the 7th day Bex has been gone. She has been talking to Tori, who is barely talking to us, so we think that means she's physically okay. But Rach and I are obviously still worried about her. We think that Will is manipulative and sketchy. We also have other issues we are concerned about. Bex is taking classes that just started up this week. After Tori called and we got the story, Rach decided to enter Bex's room for some clues about where she went, and saw that her backpack with her school stuff was still there. Unless she went without her stuff, this means that she has missed this whole week of classes. All of Bex's stuff is still here. It's not like she suddenly moved her things out. I am sure that she wants like her clothes, jewelry, personal items, and so on. I'm nervous Will just show up at our house to collect those things. It's not like she's a renter where there's a lease and we can evict her or anything. Rach and I were supposed to go away next week for a long weekend for our anniversary where Bex was supposed to be staying with the kids. Obviously, we can't count on her to do that. The other issue is that 3 weeks ago, after she agreed to the plan, her laptop fell and broke the screen. We fronted her the money for taking care of the kids and paid $400 of what we were going to pay her to get her laptop fixed. How do we get that back, short of taking her to court? Her parents are convinced that Bex will come home any minute, and that she will do the babysitting, and say they want us to be patient. We are confused by what she is doing and feel unconvinced that she'll pay us back. Just generally, I would really appreciate any advice on where to go from here. What do I say to family who heard that I came on to my cousin? Is there any repairing things with Bex? Now for the top advice before reading the update. Has Tori actually seen Bex since she left? Or are they talking exclusively through text? She disappears immediately after a nasty breakup with a sketchy partner, and the story as to why makes zero sense. Yup, I'm calling the cops. OP, please see this. I never even thought about this possibility until I read your comment. Now I'm freaked out. I hope she's okay. That was literally my first thought. The first sentence on Will read like a true crime story on YouTube. I saw more red flags on him as the story progressed. Please confirm that they've spoken on the phone or FaceTimed. The fact that she texted her sister all of this is really concerning. The fact that she didn't bring anything with her is really concerning. The fact no one has called the cops for a wellness check is incredibly concerning. Has anyone even confirmed that she is actually at this dude's house? The dude that randomly dumped her for no reason. How are people not freaking out more about this? Yeah, this is absolutely terrifying. And now for the update. First, let me say, Bex is safe now, but it was a scary ordeal. Thanks for everyone who responded and gave me a wake-up call in the last post. Bex has a habit of going out with friends and staying the night, plus she sometimes isn't the best texter, so I honestly didn't realize how serious the whole thing was until all of your comments started rolling in. Honestly, I was in shock at first with the comments. Even writing it out didn't help me see the danger that she was in. It was only after the comments started coming in and I went back and reread what I wrote that I actually saw how crazy the whole story was and how shockingly cavalier I was being about the whole thing. I'm embarrassed by my original post. When I made the post, I was embarrassingly focused on myself, my needs, my image, and what people would think of me. My selfishness didn't let me see the bigger issue of Bex's safety. The comments helped me to realize that I needed to do more to make sure Bex was safe. The first thing I did was call Tori and see if she had talked to Bex. She said she had, but it had been 2 days. I shared some of the fears I had about a harmful relationship, and I could tell that Tori was still having a hard time deciding who to believe. Despite this, she reached out, and Bex's phone went straight to voicemail. This went on for a full day of calls. Tori and I decided to call the police and request a wellness check on Bex at Will's place. The cops tried with no answer at the door, but a neighbor of Will's told the cops she had seen them packing Will's car and had not seen them for a few days. A missing persons report was created. 2 weeks after Bex's disappearance, her sister Tori called me. She told me that Bex was safe at her house and apologized for what she had said to me on the call right after Bex left. She explained that there was a whole story and that she'd like to come over with Bex the next day to speak to Rach and I. The next day, Tori and Bex drive down to our place. We all sat and eventually, Bex comes out with the story. It's long and a bit confusing. I'm not sure if we'll ever know the full story, but here are the main bullet points from Bex. Will had gotten jealous that Bex was meeting up with some friends and broke up with her. He immediately started blowing up her phone, but she ignored him the day Rach and I had talked to Bex. She went over to his place the next day to get her stuff and tell him off, but he started crying, said he was sorry, and that he had this big romantic surprise for her. He wanted to take her to the Grand Canyon. Bex has always wanted to go and talks about it regularly. She decides to give Will a second chance and hops in the car with him. They swing by our house while my wife and I were at work so she can pack some things, and then they start driving. On day 2 of their romantic getaway, she talks to her sister Tori that she was back together with Will, and that it had all been a misunderstanding. She suggested that they were at Will's place, not saying that they were multiple states away. They pull into a hotel in Arizona. Bex goes and showers. While in the bathroom, Will took her phone and texted Tori all the stuff about how manipulative Rach and I are and how I tried to sleep with her. Bex comes out of the bathroom, sees Will holding her phone and questions him. They fight and he throws her phone, which breaks the screen so that it is all black. It's why no one has heard from her. He immediately apologizes and says he loves her and wants to spend his life with her, and she believes breaking the phone was an accident. They spend a couple of days hiking around the Grand Canyon. Bex asks Will a few times what the plans are for going home, but he is cagey about it. After 2 days there, she says she needs to get back home for school and demands that they leave the next day. Will tells Bex that the whole trip is a surprise, that they are going to be living in Arizona now. I guess in Will's head they were going to start looking for an apartment. I'm really confused by this part of the story, but it seems like Will thought they were going out there to start a new life together, just the two of them. I'm not sure what he thought was going to happen to all their stuff back at home, but he legitimately thought he could surprise someone by deciding by himself that they would move halfway across the country. Super crazy. This surprise starts a huge fight. At one point in the fight, he pushes her and she slams into the wall. He immediately goes into apologizing mode. Bex says at this point it was like the scales fell off her eyes, and she saw the cycle of control, abuse, and apologizing. She pretended to calm down and forgive him so that he would calm down. A few hours later, once Will had calmed, she said she was going to shower and asked him to run out and grab them some food. As soon as he was gone, she grabbed her stuff and went to the front desk. They were on their game enough to call her a car that met her behind the building, which she took to the Verizon store. Verizon was able to get her a new phone, which she used to immediately call Tori and explain what happened. Then she bought a plane ticket and flew home. It's clear that this whole ordeal has weighed on her a lot. She spoke about being terrified of Will, feeling like he had kidnapped her and was holding her hostage. I've read what I wrote in the initial post a few times and have felt really stupid. The commenters were so quick to see the danger Bex was in and the abusive cycles, while I was dismissive. I guess I thought that a sketchy partner would seem more evil or angry. I thought I would be able to see it from a mile away. I just thought that Will was just a prick. Yet in hindsight, I now see how emotionally and verbally horrible he was to Bex before my very eyes. Rach and I both feel like we let her down by not seeing it. We should have been the ones questioning his actions from the beginning. Some comments and DMs told me that I couldn't trust Bex to be around my kids ever again, that she was dangerous, too vulnerable, and lacked judgment. But if this was the case, I shouldn't be trusted around them either, since I didn't have the wisdom to say anything either. This update is getting long, so to wrap it up, here's how things stand now. Bex's parents drove in, and Bex stayed with them in their hotel room this last week. They were really kind to her, and I think they feel as bad as Rach and I for not realizing the danger that their daughter was in earlier. They found Bex a therapist in our area who specializes in trauma and whatnot. Bex has been going regularly. Bex went with her dad to cancel the missing persons report and file a police report about the incident. We found out that Will has a warrant for some petty theft. Rach and I aren't surprised. Bex was able to give the cops his last address at the hotel, but we have no idea what has happened there. We keep Googling his name to see if a news story come up, but there's been nothing yet. Bex's parents left yesterday. We all sat down before they left and decided that Bex will move back in with us. She has been able to pick up late with her classes this semester. She's fragile, but I hope the warmth and routine of family life will provide some comfort and security. This whole thing has convinced my wife to let me pull the trigger on some security cameras. I installed them and a video doorbell. Our neighbor is a cop, and we told him what was going on. He has been kind enough to park his cruiser on the street in front of our house to be a visual in case Will tries to come around. Thanks again for everyone who commented and helped on my last post. Your comments were instrumental in helping us see the situation in a new light. Well, considering some of the stories of possessive boyfriends unaliving their girlfriends, I think OP's cousin might have emerged from this pretty lucky. Yes, as an aside, I would never go to the Grand Canyon with a jilted lover, or anywhere remote and dangerous. I was so convinced he was going to try to end her. I'm not convinced that he wasn't still going to try to end her. Even if she'd been perfectly amenable to living there with him at the drop of a hat, at some point she'd have done or said some innocuous thing that would probably have flipped the switch in his brain. He thought he could surprise her with a move to another state without any of their things while she was enrolled in school. That's a delusional level of crazy. Glad that Bex is safe. Did her ex really suggest her cousin was hitting on her? And her sister believed it. Is this Game of Thrones? Her sister believed it from only a text too. Yeah, no wonder OP was focused on themselves and didn't realize the danger to Bex. His own family was accusing him of being a predator. I'm glad he's learned to think outside of himself a bit more, but I'm surprised older cousins seem to have zero idea about the reality of her sister living with her cousin. It's possible it was just a knee-jerk reaction. If my younger sister texted me and said an older male cousin made a pass at her, my first instinct would be to protect my sister, not to insinuate that she was lying or demand a FaceTime call. Obviously, I would have follow-up questions, especially if I had thought the cousin was a decent guy. I'm guessing Tori also had questions, but that Bex not responding immediately wasn't a red flag because she was an infrequent texter. If OP sees this, they need to change the locks on doors and make sure windows are secured. I survived a horrible relationship, and this is not over in my opinion. They also need a plan for a safe house they can get to, which the ex knows nothing about, in case he starts to stalk them. Update. Dad left us and a decade later wants to reconcile because he has cancer. Am I wrong to be angry? Original post. My dad left us and started a new family when I was 14. This had a profound impact on myself and my family. Life as a child of a single parent was hard, as you can imagine. The government benefits was hardly enough to support 3 kids, and we lived below the poverty line. Then my mom became an alcoholic. I started working as soon as I legally could to help with the finances. I sacrificed my childhood so that there was electricity and gas in the house. I started failing at school and paid out of my own pocket to hire a tutor. I went to university locally, even though I had better offers elsewhere. I have a good and stable career now. My family lives with me, but I feel they are not respecting me. Recently, my dad got in touch with my younger sister through Facebook. She met up with him and brought him back to my home. He didn't apologize for the pain he put me through. He made it all about himself and tried to gain sympathy for his plight. Am I wrong for not caring and not wanting him in my life? I told him to leave. My mother and sisters tried to defend him. We got into an argument, and I threatened to evict my own family. We have not talked for days and my home has become hostile. What should I do? Now for the top advice before reading the update. Idiots are idiots. Idiots with cancer are still idiots. Idiots who die are still idiots. There's a tendency when people pass away or become sick for others to feel like they should overlook bad behavior or reconcile just because the person is going through a hard time or we might not get another chance. No. If he wanted to reconcile, he should have done it before he needed something. He has cancer, and as with any serious medical condition, there's a huge strain on both financial and emotional fronts. He only came back because he wants your help, probably with both of the above. He's not interested in reconciling for your sake, or even because he wants to make amends, because if that were the case, then he wouldn't have only been focusing on himself. He's back in your life because he wants something from you. Your mom and sisters, and probably you as well, have been wishing your dad was a different person for the last 10 years. Now he's showing up and acting like that's the case, like he wants to be part of their lives again, and like many people offered the thing they dream and wish for, your mom and sis are willing to suspend their doubts and go along with it. The reason they are so mad at you is because you are bursting the bubble of their dream with your refusal to ignore the reality of what your father has done. You can't force them not to have a relationship with him, but you can and should set boundaries for the house that you own or pay for. If you don't want him there, then they just have to visit with him elsewhere. You will respect their desire to see him, but they should also respect your desire not to see him. That is a perfectly reasonable compromise under the circumstances. I was no contact with my mother when she died, or very little contact, only when there was absolutely no one else that could help her. I don't regret it. I regret that she was horrible to me and made it impossible to have a relationship with her. And now that she's gone, I still remember all the trauma and all the crappy things she said to me right up until shortly before she died. A person isn't obligated to be part of a neglectful parent's life. And while some may feel guilty about it, the guilt I felt was minimal and it passed quickly. My mother disowned me because I divorced my wife. She expected me to live in misery with a woman who was ruining us financially and completely useless as a parent. I raised my kids mostly by myself, and both my kids are grateful that I stayed in their lives and had them live with me instead of their mother. My mother was mentally ill, but she was also mean-spirited, petty, and impossible to be around, especially in public because zero filter. I've thought about her off and on since she died in 1993. But every time I do, it just reaffirms my disdain for her. I even feel guilty about it, until I remember she cut me off like I never existed. Even my kids hated her for it, and she couldn't understand why they wanted nothing to do with her either. I totally agree with the top comment. People always try to make idiots who've passed away into people they never were. An idiot is still an idiot, even when they're dead. You're completely justified in asking him to leave and in being angry. They can have a relationship with him if they want, but they shouldn't bring him to your home without your permission. This was my first thought. OP had to step up and be the man of the house, and his sisters thought it would be okay to bring their dad to the house her brother had to provide for them in. OP, you have every right to be infuriated, especially because he didn't even apologize. He is not sorry, he is guilty. No, you're perfectly justified in your response. Explain as clearly as you can your feelings to your family. If they want to see him, then that's not something you should evict them over, as they'll have their own feelings and opinions towards him and whether they want to reconcile. But if you don't want to see him or have anything to do with him, then that obviously can't take place at your house. Where you said that you don't feel your family are respecting you, is that solely to do with this situation, or is there more to it? The fact that he can just walk back into our lives without an explanation. My family is financially dependent on me. I feel like what I have done and what I went through is just being tossed aside. I don't want him in our lives. There are things that irritate me now, such as eating dinner alone. I feel like I am being ghosted. And now for the update. You guys are right. I can't force my family to accept my views of no contact with my father. I resent this man so much. I can't stand the sight of him. After I posted yesterday, I was invited to have dinner with my family. To no one's surprise, my dad and his new family were there. I picked out the two most expensive dishes on the menu, and we had a chat. I heard his thoughts on the matter of being an absent father, but I didn't bring up any of our hardships. My mother and sisters made more attempts to make me forgive him. I did. I forgave him, but that doesn't mean I need to have a relationship with him anymore. Again, my family protested that I'm being cruel and heartless. I'm not. Many people survive cancer, and his lung cancer is in the early stages. I told them I would not be present at any family events if he was there. My sister shouted at me claiming he is our dad, you idiot. Yes, he is, to which I replied that he needs to take over his responsibilities as a father. I told them I had canceled the tenancy on the house, and we need to move out by end of this month. My sisters need to return the iPhones that are on contract, as I am canceling those. Driving lessons will be canceled, gym membership will be canceled, subscription services will be canceled, and everything else that I pay for. These are Dad's responsibilities now. Ate my dinner and left them with Bill as a little act of petty revenge. I have been staying with my girlfriend and have not answered any texts and calls from them. I need a break. I'm done. I'm done taking over Dad's role. I'm done with the financial responsibilities or acting as the parent. I'm 25 and I need to live my own life now. I don't think this will burn bridges. It's just a wake-up call for them. Edit. I'm not going to ghost or abandon them, but they need to become independent now. I'm reading all the comments. I know I have acted like a jerk. I just need some time to collect my thoughts. I might update later. I read your original post and your update, and I have to say that I'm freaking proud of you, dude. Stick to your guns. If you can take anything positive out of this entire ordeal, is that it's made you very responsible. This exactly. Because my friend's ex-husband abandoned her with 3 very young kids. She never got a penny, not one dime, zero help. She eventually built up a daycare business, and those kids never wanted for anything. All the extracurricular activities and even travel you could imagine. She has no retirement because everything she made, she spent on those kids. Fast forward 25 years. Dad drops into the picture because he hears of the wedding of the eldest daughter, and now as adults they rally around him. He's a hero and has a big cozy relationship with all the grown kids. And worst part of all, he's turned them all against her. I understand the longing for a father back in their life, but they never put up a fight and turned on the only person that cared about them when they were most vulnerable. OP, you are a good man. Stick to your guns. The fact that you stepped up gives you a unique view of what he truly did by abandoning his kids. Screw that guy, he started a new family and left you guys when you were vulnerable. He's got a lot more groveling to do and your siblings should be holding him to that. Oh my god, your poor friend. Did they ever figure out their dad was an ass? No. And it's devastating. What's worse is, even at the wedding, the absent dad had kissed the groom's parents' butt so much, offering to help with the wedding, etc., that he got a huge public acknowledgement or speech by the groom's father about what a great father he was and what a great job he did with his daughter. My friend didn't have a single thing said about her, and she actually helped. I've known her for 20 years, and I've watched her raise her kids firsthand. She hasn't invited any of this, only suffered for her kids, and this is what she gets. I'm sick just typing this, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Makes you take pause about how much sacrifice is too much when you only get nothing at the end. I have so much respect for you. I can understand all too well the pain of having a parent abandon you. And I can't imagine the added pain of your mother turning to alcohol, only adding to the financial burden. It's harsh, but you have worked hard to support your mother and sibling when it is not your responsibility. If he wants the title and respect back then, he can step up to the plate and fill the father role completely. Screw him, it sounds like he only came back because he was diagnosed with cancer. It should have never been my responsibility. I didn't work out of love for my family or some sort of charity. It was out of desperation. We were so close to being put into the foster care system. Our lives would have turned out much worse. Next story. I just caught my dad cheating, and the woman he is cheating with is pregnant. Plus update. So a female 16 decided to go to a local coffee shop and get a drink when I spotted my dad with this woman. Not a big of a deal. They could have been co-workers or something. Then he started brushing her hair out of her face while he was talking, and he had a big smile on his. Definitely something you don't normally do with just a friend or co-worker. So I started recording. Then they kissed, which where I'm from, you definitely don't do that with a friend. I also noticed this woman is in her mid to late 20s while my dad is 41. I also noticed this woman is very much pregnant, probably around 8-ish months. After I got my drink, I decided to confront my dad and walk up to them. I just said, "Hey dad, what are you doing?" He looked shocked, but then said, "Oh, just getting coffee with a friend." I decided to be brave and said, "So you kiss all your friends like that?" I saw panic in his eyes and he quickly said, "Don't tell your mom." I then asked if the baby was his. He said a quick yes while not even looking at me. I just said, "Well, you've had at least around 9 months to tell mom about your affair, yet you haven't. I'm really disappointed in you." Then I left. My dad has a job in business, so we always thought he was busy at work, but I now see where he spent some of his time. I was going to text my mom right away, but she's at work right now, and she's a nurse, so I don't want to distract her from an important job. I'll tell her when I get home from school. I feel really bad for my mom. She told me this morning my dad had an early morning meeting. I could see sadness in her eyes. I asked what's wrong, and she admitted to wishing he was home more to be with us. So yeah, I can't believe my dad did this. My mom definitely deserves better though. Now for the top advice before the little update. This is likely to get very messy. The most important thing to remember is that you hold no blame in this situation, no matter what your dad may say. Of course you have to tell your mom. Tell her and then take a step back. You are a child, and neither parent should use you as a sounding board. Your mom will likely be heartbroken when she finds out. It's hard to prepare yourself for that. Give her lots of cuddles and reassure her you love her, but encourage her to talk to a friend or sibling about it all. Thank you. I have a feeling my dad is going to be mad at me for telling her, but clearly he's not, so I have to tell her. That's laughable that he would be mad at you for him being caught with his affair partner. The audacity of him begging you not to tell your mom. Iki. Wow. Good for you for confronting him like that. This is a bad situation for you and your mom, of course, but because you handled it right there in the moment, he won't be able to lie and prolong the pain. I was debating in my head if I should confront him or not, but I'm glad I ended up doing it. Info: how did his side chick act? I'm assuming she knows he's married and doesn't care. I'm sorry you are going through this and that your dad is a horrible lying cheat. I'm pretty sure she knows as he had his wedding ring on. She didn't really say anything, just kinda stared at me. Please tell your mom. I am planning on telling her. I just can't right now because it's not right for me to do it over text. When I was a teen, I was in a situation much like this with my family. It may not come as much of a shock to your mom as you think. Just be aware of that. Now for the mini update. So I told my mom. She was upset and cried for a while and wanted to be left alone. Then my dad came home with flowers to try and suck up. Long story short, they yelled and argued a lot, and now my mom and I are packed up going to my grandma's. Last story. My dad is trying to bribe me, so I won't tell my mom he is cheating. And it worked. For as long as I can remember, I've been a daddy's girl. But after growing up, I see that he isn't who I thought he was when I was 4. My parents honestly don't need to be together. My dad screams at my mom because she asks him to get a job. He had one, but where he's at isn't working right now. And mom is breaking her back trying to provide for both me and my sister. My dad doesn't like that we try and stick up for our mom, but when you have a dad who chases you around town, threatens his kids, and curses you out because you love your grandma more than him, you as the child can only take so much. It's grown folks' business. That's fine, I don't care. Now here we are today. I'll admit I may be in the wrong, but when it comes to my mom, I don't play about her. I was with my dad yesterday, grocery shopping, when we met one of his old hookups. He cheated on my mom with her some years ago. They hugged, and she tried to hug me, but I said no way in hell, and walked off. I got into a lot of trouble for it. So we're in the truck, and he calls her and tells her, "Look baby, she didn't mean it." I say they and he just rolls his eyes and says, "She is going to apologize." I just look at him and say, "You're married. Call my mom baby." He then looked as if he had just got caught. This man was stupid. He called her baby, in front of me. I told him he's an idiot. He hung up the phone and was literally crying, begging. I said no, and that I'd be telling mom as soon as we got to the house. He wouldn't start the car. He begged and begged me. So I used him to my advantage. He went into the Apple store and he left his phone. I've seen him put in the code, so I knew what it was. I found him texting and sexting multiple women. I took pictures on my phone and sent them to my sister. I guess he noticed he left it because he came running back to the car for it. I have a brand new phone, an iPad, and he gave me a $500 Shane card. I also got my sister an iPad and a new pair of Jordans. I still don't know where he got the money from since he doesn't have a job. But we got home, we ate dinner, and I snitched on him while eating my McDonald's, which he also bought. I told my sister to show our mom the proof, and she went ballistic. He's currently kicked out, and my mom is looking for a divorce lawyer. All of my dad's side of the family is currently blaming me, but I don't care. He's a cheater and my mom is a great woman who deserves the best. Screw you, Dad. Is it possible your mom's money paid for all that stuff? Your mother is better off without him. My first thought, make sure he didn't rob your mom to buy these things. I'm sure it's nice to have, but it won't be nice living on the sidewalk because he spent your mom's mortgage on Jordans. I've seen this comment plenty. We checked through the bank statements and no money was from my mom. He apparently was saving up for a new house for us, and that's where it came from. Saving up for an apartment to meet his side chick is more like it.